You're listening to Popcorn Unscripted,
the podcast where we dive into movies and TV shows with no scripts, no filters, just real talk and plenty of popcorn.
I'm Bailey.
And I'm Dylan.
We're here to talk about everything we love
And love to hate.
in pop culture. So grab your popcorn,
Sit back.
and let's get this show started. Well, episode 1, Dylan. How are you feeling?
I don't know. To be fair, this is kind of the first time we both have done something like this to begin with.
I mean, we've both done streaming before, so it's not the first time we've talked in a mic, per se.
Well, not into a mic, but at the same time, for basically talking into the void and not having something respond back to us.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That is very fair. So, we are doing Back to the Future. So, first things first, what is our first impressions?
I was going to time it. I was going to try to time it where you just paused.
He's got the record over here.
Yeah, I forgot that this one drops slower compared to my other one, so beauty of being unscripted, everyone.
Yeah, very much beautiful.
You get to hear all of our screw-ups, pretty much.
So it's like, we grew up with this trilogy, so we are probably going to be a bit biased with it.
Probably hugely biased, especially me, because that's my favorite. The Back to the Future trilogy is my favorite movie of all time. In my opinion,
all three
movie.
Or just one?
All three. I love all three. Mom hates the third one. She does not like that one. I love all three perfectly. But Grant, I think it's also because Papa used to love watching westerns and I used to watch a bunch of them with him as a kid. So I'm used to the whole western aesthetic for that movie, and it's very, I don't know how to put this. It's very
nostalgic.
Yeah, very nostalgic, but also it flows just like an actual western, like the old movies and TV shows,
such as like Gunsmoke and.
Yeah, I couldn't think of the name for a second. It drew blank.
There's so many.
Gunsmoke, all that stuff.
So I guess here would be the first question, because we're going to go through the first film in this episode. What would you remember your first impressions being when you watched it as a kid? Do you remember what you felt when you were watching it as a kid?
It's hard to really remember, honestly, because when I first watched it, I want to say 8 years old. And that was the very first time I ever got introduced to Back to the Future because of my Papa Jim. He's the one that introduced it to me, and I grew up loving the movie ever since because of that. So I would say very invested and just fell in love with the movie, along with all the kind of old school stuff, retro, all that stuff because of it. I think that's why I've stuck so close to the retro equipment and everything.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I don't really remember my childhood that much, so I don't remember when I watched it, but I knew that I fell in love with just the whole concept of time travel and stuff because of Back to the Future. And just the whole science fiction stuff in general. I just fell in love with it because of Back to the Future. So this is kind of a very big nostalgic thing for us. So I guess we had rewatched the movie yesterday. So I guess what would be our first impressions now, watching it now that we're older and we're able to like see new things since we're older and we are wiser and we're able to pick out different things now. So it's like, what did we discover now that we didn't discover when we were kids?
Let's see. Probably because a lot of the stuff that we didn't recognize as kids, there was a lot of stuff that, looking back on it, it amazes me that some of the scenes we didn't pick out certain stuff. Like, for example, near the end of the movie, the movie theater that Marty crashes into when coming back to 1985, that building is actually already boarded up and not in use. So it's kind of convenient. He crashed into the one building that was already abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was very convenient.
It is very, very convenient.
And the fact that the aerobics place was the old diner in 1955.
Yeah, we did notice that. We did notice that.
It took me a second to register. Oh, wait, it's the same place next to Texaco. Why did I not notice that as a kid?
Because we're young and naive.
Ooh, flashing lights.
Ooh, flashy lights. Okay, so moving forward from that, so how well do we think the movie balanced, like, its action and dialogue and character development? How well do you think the movie had balanced that?
I think it balanced it pretty well. There's a lot of scenes where it had a good amount of investment of getting you into the scene of what's going on. For example, Doc rolling out the DeLorean and you being in awe just like Marty is, seeing it for the very first time. Since he has not seen this yet. He hasn't even seen Doc yet as of right now at the beginning of the movie.
Exactly, yeah.
He's only heard his voice from the phone call, and that's it. So it very sets a scene of getting us invested with by showing us also. It puts us in the shoes of Marty of in the exact same mindset of what is this? What is Doc showing me? And is that DeLorean?
Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty much. I honestly think everything flowed very well. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't like,
half-assed.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah, it just flowed really, really well, and it's...
Especially with the action scenes.
It wasn't... I can't think of words. But yeah. It just... I don't really know how else to put that, in all honesty.
I think it balanced it really well, especially when it switches from the points in the story where it wants to get you invested, and then it follows up with some kind of small, not even just a large action scenes, but little small snippets of it. Like, for example, Marty trying to get George to ask out Lorraine in the cafeteria, and it ends up with a confrontation with Biff. Mm-hmm. While there's not really an action, it makes you think that an action scene's about to happen, but it's cut short. That way it can continue on with what's going on.
Exactly. That's right.
Well, it finds the smallest ways to dive you back in if you're starting to get, starting to tone out what's going on.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it keeps you engaged.
Yeah.
It more so. It keeps you, entertained, if you were to have ADHD and you're just kind of zoning out, it can bring you back in fairly quickly.
Yeah.
It'll suck you back in.
Especially the little jokes scattered about, especially from Doc.
Oh yeah. God, Doc's so funny. I swear. So speaking of the characters and stuff in general, is there a character that stood out to you the most?
Doc.
Of course. I knew that answer before I even asked that.
Bro, I love Christopher Lloyd. He is the funniest man I've seen on when there's not a comedy skit or anything like that. The man knows how to make a joke and also how to set up said joke.
He really does. He just has that natural ability to make anybody laugh, I think. He just has that natural... He's kind of like Jim Carrey in a lot of ways.
But he does it in his own special way, and it makes it even funnier. For the outtakes specifically, of him not being unable to open the door to his shop, or he couldn't remember the line going to the shop.
Yeah.
But the way he does it, it still makes it funny.
It does. It makes it so funny. So speaking of just characters in general, is there any that we think was underdeveloped or just one-dimensional? I know that we were talking about Biff a while ago.
Yeah.
I think Biff is kind of one of those characters where he's just he's just your generic bully, that's just really wants to be a hot shot and he just wants to be the talk of the town, kind of one of those kinds of bullies.
Yeah, he definitely, that was definitely probably the one downfall about his character is that he was just one-dimensional. And granted, this is just in the first movie. He does get a little better in the second movie, but at the same time, that's only in hindsight because we know of the second.
Exactly.
The first one, he just was so one-dimensional and just felt like the typical generic tall tall bully, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Which, and now that I'm thinking about it, George McFly is kind of like one of those, like, very generic, nerdy kind of guys, too.
Mm-hmm.
And he's kind of, it's not like he's really one-dimensional, he's just kind of, like,
He has
annoying.
his moments.
Like, he's kind of has that annoying thing about him, especially in the way he talks, too.
I think it's mainly the adult George, honestly, that I felt kind of annoyed at times.
Yeah,
especially
I can agree.
with
the laugh.
The laugh irritated me.
Yeah.
The laugh definitely irritated me because of the way he does it, and it sounds like he's gasping for air because he doesn't have enough. He sounds like a fish out of water, pretty much.
He does. He really does. It's like, why? Do you need some water? He needs some milk.
Nah, he's already got enough of that. And Lorraine, I don't know if it counts for Lorraine. Well, hell, Jail. No, I think it's side. I'm going side characters now because I was thinking of Jailbird Joey.
Yeah, that's side characters. Mostly main characters.
They are
is
the
what
ones
I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, heck, even the side characters sometimes can be one-dimensional. Like, for example, the three grunts, basically, of Biff.
Yeah. That's like your usual, like, leader and then pack.
Yeah. But they were just so... They looked so generic, even though they barely conversated at all.
Although I did like the guy with the 3D glasses. That was pretty cool. That was actually pretty neat style choice.
I do find it fun when he goes to throw a punch, he has to jump up and then hit the person.
Yeah. That was very funny.
Let's see. I'm trying to think. Now, characters that we think could were kind of a 180 compared to like their past selves, though.
Oh yeah, Lorraine's definitely was a 180.
A whole 180.
Definitely whole 180.
It definitely took me until now to realize, Jesus Christ, how horny that girl is.
Yes,
bro. The second she saw Marty, she wanted to jump his bones.
And she really did.
Oh my God!
It's like watching it now. It's just like daggum.
Well, to be fair, in that scene alone, I didn't know whether or not to be uncomfortable for Marty or what.
Yeah, you don't know, because it's just like, at the same time, you know that's his mother. And
it's his mother, so it's like, how do you respond in this situation?
Yeah,
she looks
felt bad for him.
She looks completely different aside from the hairstyle, but it's like, what the fuck?
Also, the fact that she looked younger.
Well, it's more so her hairstyle didn't look like it changed whatsoever from 1955 to 1985, it looked completely the exact same. But it's like the entire attitude did 180.
Yeah.
What I never called a boy or wanted to park with a boy, and then proceeds to mention in 55 that she has done this before, or she's parked before, she's drunk before, she's smoked before. So it's like
very hypocritical mom.
Yeah. But granted, she's probably coming from a place of, I was in those shoes, this screwed me up.
This screwed me up. I don't want my kids to go through that. Because
I did notice her attitude after the changes that Marty had done, her attitude in the future didn't change because she was more energetic and stuff.
And she was also thin.
She was thin. Well, she was thinner, but yes, but she was more. Looked like she had more energy.
Yeah.
Compared to her future self or her 85 original self.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because, but then again, they also did a lot of sports.
Yeah, they did.
Because they mentioned about doing tennis.
They came back in with tennis rackets, and so they were doing tennis.
So she's actively staying active. So that's probably why she also had more energy.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it also makes me wonder what happened between the past self, original self, and the future self, original self.
Mm-hmm.
What happened there to cause such a drain of energy? Was it just dealing with George?
It could have been just dealing with George, or the fact that she had to do everything herself because, you see how George is. He's not very confrontational. He just... He just takes what he gets, and he doesn't like to stand up for himself. And so I would imagine that's why she would drink the vodka in order to cope and deal with all of that stuff that she has to deal with on a daily basis. Because she knows George isn't going to be there for her. Because you could see the way their relationship was in the beginning. Like, he wasn't even listening to her.
Yeah, he was right.
He wasn't even paying attention. He was just writing down whatever he was writing down.
Well, I think he carried on his stories of science fiction, but he never, like, actively wrote it into a book like he did in the past change, in the future change. Because he was... he always didn't want people to look at it or anything because they were afraid. He was afraid of what they would think.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
So he while I can understand his point of view with that, his past self, yeah. I can completely understand his past self. Honestly, absolutely. It's just his future self, not so much.
Speaking of that, how relevant or impactful were the themes compared to today's world? Like, how do you think the themes in Back to the Future can help us now in this world that we live in, I guess, is what...
I honestly have no clue. Because
like, I would take it as, like, as George would say, if you believe in yourself, you can accomplish anything.
Okay, even though he just took that same from Marty. Because Marty said it to him first.
Yeah, he did. But then again, where did Marty get that from?
I think he just came up with it on himself, because I noticed throughout the movie he didn't. No one else has said that to him either. Not even Doc.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things that.
No, his girlfriend.
Oh, that's right.
His girlfriend. Mm-hmm.
Now I remember. Okay,
because she was being encouraging to Marty there at the beginning. I believe that's where I think that's where he got that from. I'm not 100% sure if she actually said it that way, but.
Heck, no, it is. It is because it was when she was gave him back the. I just hit the mic. It's when she gave back his cassette tape of what his band had done. Yeah. Because he was afraid that no one's going to take it. Which, ironically enough, it was him who was saying, "God dang, I sound like my dad."
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's probably like the biggest thing of the first film is like, if you can set your mind to it, you can do anything. I think that's probably like the biggest message from the first movie.
I can agree, honestly, because nowadays it's kind of hard for people to put their mind to something and accomplish it. And I have no room to talk because I'm the exact same way.
Well, I am also. I'm very big procrastinator. I have like so many projects at home that are like half done. Mm-hmm. You know this.
Yeah. And hell, I can't say much either because I can get the motivation at times, but then it immediately diminishes the second I go to actually do it.
ADHD people, yay!
Heck, I don't even know if I even have that. I never got diagnosed with it. So it's like
I had gotten diagnosed with ADD, but they have completely eradicated ADD, and it's now just 3 types of ADHD, apparently. So, but anyway, we've already talked about like how the pacing of the movie and stuff like that, but let's get into like the visuals and the actual cinematography. So, like, how were the visuals and special effects? Did they enhance the story, or did they kind of distract from it?
I mean, I think it did really well, especially with making it actually look like a science fiction film. Especially with the fire trail left behind by the DeLorean every time it transcended in time. Though, I will say that some of the fire effects, for example, when it first went back in time, when he sent Einstein forward in time by a minute, the fire trail that went between their legs was very obviously not good. But
you have to think this movie was made in 1985.
Well, I mean, like, for the reason why I say is because you can tell that one was definitely set up to be, I guess, CGI in a way. Yeah. But the actual ones when he was going back to 1985, that one looked like actual real fire.
Like they actually used fire for that.
Yeah. But I think they did use parts of fire for when it went between your legs, but used like CGI when it actually was at their feet and stuff. But used some parts of it to be actual real fire. But some of it just didn't connect properly, and it very looked jarring.
Yeah.
And easily to be told, hey, that's not real.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can agree.
And one other scene that I re-noticed last night was the fire on the wire after lightning struck it. That one you could tell was CGI. But then when it cut back to Doc, you could see actual fire and like just little small pieces across the wire. But when it first ignited, that one you could tell was fake.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, other than that, the special effects did really well in every aspect.
Which really, there wasn't really much to it other than the DeLorean stuff. There wasn't really much special effects to it.
Well, the green screen with Marty disappearing.
Well, yeah, that too.
That one was kind of bad, but at the same time, you can't really do much on that.
It's 1985, you know, they can only do so much with the technology they had.
Yeah, you gotta cut some slack.
So it was probably really good for the time.
Not to mention, to be fair, it's a green screen. That one you can obviously tell, because it looked like they filmed like the background for it of like Marty just standing there.
And then they just
green screened his hand.
And they just like lifted up his hand and it was just in front of the camera.
Yeah. Yeah,
because because now that I think about it, it didn't look like his arm was connected to his body when he lifted up his hand.
Yeah, it looked off because of the angle it was placed. It did not look like it was actually part of him.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, there's only so much you could do back then, so it's like they had to, especially with the fact that it got rejected 40 times originally, and they had to do so many changes to the actual story and everything. Because, for example, Bailey over here didn't know about the original sequence to go back to 1985 with dropping a nuclear bomb onto the DeLorean.
Yeah, I didn't.
And using that to go back.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. It's like I told him last night. I was like, I'm glad they didn't go with that because I don't know how they would have done that. Realistically, I don't know how they would have approached doing that unless they would have done gotten a fake DeLorean and blew it up. Yeah,
and not to mention the way it was set up. It looked like it was just a nuclear testing ground just in the center of town, pretty much.
Yeah, and so that would have been very odd to have in just the center, in just like a random town in the middle of nowhere.
Well, not to mention they're dropping it without any precautions or anything. Because if you know,
because it disintegrates everything around it.
Well, not even that. It killed so many people in the blast. So it's like, what was there any precautions? Were this just a mistake, or what happened here?
Yeah.
Because you can tell this was the original way it was supposed to go, but it's like, what did they not evacuate the place before doing this test, or what was the game plan there?
Yeah, so it just didn't really make sense at all to me.
Anyway. Yeah, so I'm glad they changed it to the way they did it because it makes a lot more sense timing and scene sequence. Because the story did not make sense with the other one. But granted, that's because we're only dealing with a small part of that sequence. We have no clue what led up to it.
That's very true.
So, it could make the entire story. It could have been
a completely different story for that storyboard. It could have been an entirely completely different story.
Yeah.
Than
it gave
what
me
we know
Nuketown
today.
vibes.
It did what?
Nuketown vibes from Black Ops 2. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, let's get into the music and the soundtrack and stuff. So how well did the music complement the story, and did any music feel out of place?
I don't think so. All the music fit very well and was very well timed.
And it was very well written too, because the person that wrote the soundtrack for Back to the Future, Alan Silvestri, he also wrote the score for the Avengers later on in 2012. So I'm very familiar with his work. He does really good soundtracks.
And heck, even I think the only weird part in the soundtrack was literally that one scene when he was auditioning at the talent show.
Yeah, that is very true.
Because his guitar riffs did not match the beat of the song whatsoever.
He was just wanting it loud.
Yeah, though it was very awkward during the Johnny B. Good scene. that was
yes,
very...
that was very, very awkward. It's like, what the heck are you doing, dude?
Yeah, it was just that end part. If that end part wasn't there, it would have been fine.
Yeah, it would.
It's just very exaggerated.
Yeah, very, very over exaggerated. But that's who Marty is. He's like, that's just part of his character, I guess.
Because I felt like he was about to pull a Kiss and start licking his guitar and playing it like that.
He almost did, I'm pretty sure, because he ended up putting it behind his head at one point. And heck, I'm surprised he didn't.
That would have been funny,
That would have
honestly.
been really funny, actually.
It gets caught in between like the stuff. He's like, ow, ow, ow.
Ow, 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 ow.
Can I get a little help? Or sorry, can I get a little help?
Okay, but speaking of, like, characters in the writing and dialogue and kind of stuff, did the writing allow for character growth, or did anything feel predictable at all? I honestly don't think so. Like I said earlier, I think it all flowed fairly well. I don't think there was anything that felt predictable or anything of that nature.
Yeah, I feel the same way. There wasn't, especially with the, I think it was Gigawatts, 1.21 gigawatt scene with Marty showing Doc of how the time travel works, essentially, and him actually being shocked at what that meant. Because it's like, at the time you would think, oh, Doc already knows about it, will already know about this because he's already like designed the flux capacitor at this point.
Right.
So he already has this idea. No, he was completely shocked that his future self had set it up like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially the joke about the plutonium in every drugstore.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm sure you can get plutonium in every drugstore in your
In
future,
1985,
but here it's kind of hard to come by.
Well, Grant, he even had a problem. He had to steal it from Libyans.
Mm-hmm. He did. He
and
absolutely did.
Parts of a pinball machine.
Yep.
Which is very shocking. They took a pinball machine parts to make the time-traveling DeLorean.
No, it didn't make the DeLorean. That's what he traded to get the plutonium. He gave them the parts thinking that was the plutonium, or that was whatever he had invented for them, and then he took the plutonium.
Oh, he wanted to. Yeah, they wanted him to make him a bomb out of those things.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
I misunderstood that part.
Yeah. But anyway, so gonna try to slowly wrap things up here. So what was your favorite scene and why? What made it stand out to you? What was yours?
I would say my favorite scene, honestly, is of Doc trying to reconnect the wiring to the lamppost. Just because that whole sequence alone is just...
I can agree. That's
it's
a really
definitely
good
getting
scene.
intense because the DeLorean is getting there. The lightning's about to strike that clock tower at any moment, and Doc is trying to get the plug to go back in, and ends up accidentally unplugging it from the other side too. So it's like there's a lot of high stakes in that scene, but also at the same time it's a little funny with Doc, his expressions and stuff.
Well, that's just a Christopher Lloyd thing, I think.
Well, it's more so, I think it's specifically the smugness on his face when he finally got like loose enough and it's like, oh, we're about to reconnect this. And it's like, huh? He looks and there's a tree limb holding the other side down where he can't connect it. And it's like, ah! So it's like the face that he makes just because of that once he realized what just happened is what kills me.
I honestly think mine is probably when he was shocked about how much power it would take to do the put in the flux capacitor. I think that part is probably my favorite. It's just funny. 1.21 gigawatts!
That's Rose. We're completely ignoring the joke about Ronald Reagan.
Oh, we are. We are. Ronald Reagan!
The fact that he is so...
The actor!
And then he just proceeds to name off different actors as the first lady and his vice president.
Yeah.
It just kills me.
It's just so funny. That is very funny.
That or him using that thing to read his mind, Marty's mind.
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
like, you come from a long distance. Yes! No, don't tell me!
No, don't tell me!
You want to sell me a subscription? No!
No! Doc, no!
It's just so there's so many good scenes. Honestly, it's hard to choose good one, just one single scene, but there's just so many good ones.
There really is. There really is.
And that's just from the first movie. That's not counting the second or third.
That's very true. But we've talked about our favorite, but do we have any least favorite moments from the movie? Did it like distract from the overall experience?
To be fair, least favorite, I don't know. But then again, I know your scene is during the dance where George is walking off after Lorraine was taken, swooped in by another guy to dance with her, and he just turns his back and starts walking away. And then the very next clip, he then just shoves the dude off, and it's like, huh?
Yeah, he just has this random struck of confidence from out of nowhere. And I'm just like, where did that come from?
Yeah, the confidence boost from with Biff, that made more sense because he's hurt. Yes, he's hurting him, but at the same time, he hurts Lorraine in the process. So it's like,
so that was like a trigger.
Yeah, it was like a trigger. But the other one, what was the trigger?
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, okay.
Because the guy wasn't hurting Lorraine either. She was just kind of trying to get away from him.
Yeah, I guess that may have been, but at the same time, that could have been done a little bit better.
Yeah, I felt like that was just kind of like cut, and then it just went on.
It probably had a certain amount of time that they had to reach, and they were afraid that if they kept too much of the that scene in, that they might go over the lap time that they required.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of long scenes that were cut, like the Darth Vader scene.
Yes.
That one.
I honestly wish they would have kept that whole scene in, because that makes so much more... It made so much more sense to me to have that whole thing in.
Instead of just
and how Marty
off.
got in and out of his house, and, it kind of explained that a bit better. Other than him just appearing and
saying, "I'm Darth Vader,"
and Darth Vader.
And then the very next scene is George running like a headless chicken to Marty. He's like, "I'm gonna get my brain melted if I don't ask her out." It's like, okay. I wish I could have seen that conversation, but at the same time, I can see why it was cut out at certain points.
Mm-hmm.
But for example, the scene I was talking about yesterday with the Lorraine cheating on a test.
Yeah.
That outtake, I think, outtake would have made a lot better for that scene because it
flowed right into when Doc was like, "Which one's your pop?"
Yeah, and the previous scene was of them walking up to the school.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, what? Because it's like walking up to the school, doesn't even go into the school yet. And the very next scene is just him already standing next to the wall, looking down the hallway and going, "Which one's your pop?" Mm-hmm. It's like, that makes less sense. But with the rest of it, especially with Lorraine walking past Doc, saying that she was going to make an F on that anyway, and then him actually walking up to Marty after listening to that, then it makes sense. It makes that scene flow a little bit better.
Yeah, I think
instead
so
of just
too.
a random cut.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of things like that, what is one thing that you think could have made the movie better, other than what we've just talked about? Is there anything else you think could have made the movie better?
I really don't know. There's a lot.
I don't really know either. I honestly think it's a great film for what it is.
And a lot of the scenes that they used did well for the movie. Honestly, it made good storytelling and everything. Even
really
though
did.
we criticize a lot, like some cuts and stuff, the Biff being Biff and stuff like that. The movie went good. The storytelling was great. The science fiction was really good, especially the way it explained everything. Because that's what I wish a lot of movies nowadays would do. Explain your stuff.
Exactly.
Hell, I can't speak. Dog did a better job explaining how the DeLorean works than most of superhero movies now. Mm-hmm. That's sad when you have a movie talking about time travel doing a better job explaining that. Mm-hmm. Something as convoluted as that no freaking director can get right now. it's always screwing up something else in the process.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But here's Back to the Future proving that wrong, that it's easy to just explain the stuff instead of just throwing the shit out there and just expecting you to figure it out on your own.
Yeah. Expecting you to connect the dots instead of, like, actually telling a story.
Yeah.
You know.
Especially with each movie leading into each other and following up directly after the last one ended.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unlike Marvel. DC, any director nowadays, for some reason.
For some reason, yeah. Well, I don't necessarily have to ask this question again, but would you watch this again? Why or why not?
Hell yes. just to relive childhood, honestly, but also just to enjoy such a great story and great characters, honestly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would definitely 100% watch it again. And if you haven't seen the movie, you youngins,
Please give it a watch.
Yes,
At least once.
At least once. Just give it a try. I know it's old, but just give it a try. You'll be fine.
Yes, you might criticize it, but at the same time, don't go in expecting anything. That's one thing that we were talking about earlier. Don't go into a movie expecting shit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that is going to set up you hating the movie in the process if it does not meet that expectation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think everyone can agree that that's what ruins movies for a lot of people, is having that high expectation and it crumbling massively. AKA, look at a lot of the games lately.
Mm-hmm. They get so overhyped and then, it just crumbles and falls because they're trying to rush because there's so much hype over it. And, and there's movies that end up that way too. Because I was talking about that yesterday with the Fantastic Four movie. They're hyping it up so much that I'm afraid it's only going to fall.
Yeah, and not to mention,
no matter how good it looks. A
lot of people have been criticizing the movie for some of the choices in the movie also, but don't expect it to be a copy and paste of the comics. It's going to use some aspects of it, yes. It's not going to take every single little thing from the comics.
Otherwise,
Otherwise, you'd be there for probably 5 hours, maybe 20 hours, trying to convolute everything.
Exactly.
Hence why I think, while at the same time you can't expect much from the movies, at least give a little bit of leniency, and just not have any expectations. Don't hold off on any criticism or anything, and don't listen to critics or the media. Take your mind clear and don't expect anything. Watch the movie and then give your critiques on it.
Yeah, because it's like these days, I don't even know what what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not really sure what their criteria is for reviewing movies. I'm
Slop.
not really... what is their criteria that a movie has to meet in order for them to get a good rating?
But yeah, but what you're saying, criteria, it's unknown. And not to mention, for example, let's take the Oscars, for example. That's some bull. Because did you know they added a new rule where they had to watch the movies now?
Yep, I did.
That really just sets up how bad the critics are, and don't ever listen to them.
Everybody that has to vote has to watch all of the movies in that category in order to vote.
Yeah,
which honestly, I think is kind of fair, but also that's a lot of content to watch, and that's a lot of somebody's time.
Well, at the same time, they're named critics for a reason. That's what they get paid to do. Is watch movies, write a review. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's their job. So if they can't even do the bare minimum of watching the movie and just immediately doing a review and giving it negative or giving it positive for whatever it was, that just says a lot about what they expect out of movies compared to what us as normal customers and viewers go to see.
Exactly. And that's the thing too, is everybody has their own interests. Everybody has their own clicks and their own things. So it's like you can't really go off what the critics say. And many movies have proved that so many times. A good example is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie that came out what, in 2023?
Think so.
24?
Yeah, I think it's 2023.
The critics, like, bombed that movie, but the audience absolutely loved it, and rightfully so, because they put so much work into it.
Especially the fact that they actually made the characters like Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica, they actually made them into animatronics that can switch from animatronic mode to costume mode, pretty much.
Yeah.
It can be doubled for certain scenes, so that way making it easier for recording and also making you remember, hey, that's a robot that's supposed to be there, but that's also possessed by a child. So it's like one of them things. We might know a lot of the stuff for it. The critics don't know anything.
Yeah,
because they don't care.
Yeah, if they actually cared, they would actually like do like their homework on said Community and actually give it a fair shot and not just be like, oh, we just didn't like it.
But I will admit that's kind of unfair to ask of someone to like, if they're going to see a movie, to look at what the source material is all the time. Like, say, Marvel movies, saying, if you want to enjoy this movie, go read the comics of that certain character. That's very ingenuous to do because not a lot of people are going to be interested in the same thing. But at the same time, don't just go blindly hating the movie just because it's not something you don't know.
Exactly.
For example, it's a Fantastic Four movie. There's a lot of people hating on the changes that they've done. And some, yes, can be rightfully so, is jarring. But at the same time, it might be pulling from the source material of what's going on. And you just never know.
Yeah.
Hell, I didn't even know there was a female Silver Surfer. But then again, I've not been ever invested in the Silver Surfer as a character or anything. And be invested in the comics of that character because it's not something that interests me.
Exactly.
But I can see where a lot of people enjoy the character. I just don't, it's not my cup of tea.
Right.
But then again, I'm not used to the whole Fantastic Four to begin with. I will admit that. Because I never really...
But you've watched the Sony movies.
I've watched the Sony movies, yes. But a lot of them I have not watched a lot of the superhero movies that they put out. Grant, I love the Spider-Man movies of Tobey Maguire. I love those. I've watched Andrew Garfield's and I've watched Tom Holland's. I've watched all versions of Spider-Man for the movie-wise. Grant, I'm biased. I like Tobey Maguire's better, honestly.
Which I do too.
Grant, Tom's is just annoying to me because he doesn't feel like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And that's a multitude of different things, honestly, that can be taken. Great, take it with a grain of salt. People's opinions, honestly, but at the same time, it's an opinion.
That's the moral of the story, is that
what you enjoy, someone else is not going to enjoy. And that's perfectly fine. Everyone can agree to disagree, which I think everyone needs to learn in this day and age. Because it's always, if you disagree with this opinion, I hate you or anything like that. No. Take it with a grain of salt. Enjoy what you want to enjoy. Let them enjoy what they want to enjoy. It's not mutually exclusive.
Yeah. That's all for today's episode of Popcorn Unscripted.
Thanks so much for tuning in.
If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to follow us on Twitter at PopUnscripted.
And let us know your thoughts or any suggestions for future episodes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes.
And if you'd like to support the show, check out our donation page.
Your support means a lot and it helps keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep your popcorn close
and your movie critiques closer.
Thanks for listening to Popcorn Unscripted.